My name is John Pinkowski, and I am the product owner for ACF2 Top Secret and a bunch of other things that are underneath the security business unit. Today, we're going to have a short talk on why it's important to really start looking at advanced authentication, multi-factor authentication from a mainframe perspective. CA, our security department, has done a lot of work. A couple of my friends here have worked with us in our journey to get multi-factor authentication. If you'd like to talk to them, I'm sure they would like to talk about the project. It is a journey. I think it's not turnkey. I wish it was. The mainframe is a little lacking, actually, a little behind the curve with multi-factor authentication. I think it's a fair assessment, right, Steve, Shannon? We've come a long way, there's no doubt. I don't think we're perfect yet. I think there's still work in the space, when you think about it, that's what Agile is all about. So if you look at it from an Agile perspective, please go to the Agile side of the house and talk to them. The legal disclaimer, of course, this is all for informational purposes. I don't think I'm talking about any futures in here. We covered that in the pre-con information. If anybody didn't go to the pre-con sessions, they will be posted for you to go look at them. I'm always available to talk about MFA. I love talking about it. Some of my colleagues say I talk too much about it, but again, it is a journey. So do not think you're just going to be able to turn it on and everything's going to be perfect. I think we're getting closer, but it's going to take a while. What we're going to talk about today real quick, we're going to talk about what we do offer in the space. We do have a couple different options because security can't be one size fits all. I wish it was. I do envy me just booting up my PC and everything's there and we can just not think about it. On the mainframe, it's still a little work. Tell you about the support status. I'll go over a little bit about the highlights of the features that you can exploit within the mainframe authentication, advanced authentication space. We did try to make it easily to implement. You can shrink it down to a couple users. When some of my friends started, they had 1 or 2 users, and that's all they were playing with to make sure that they covered their bases before they started rolling out. One of the things that we have found, most of the time it's privileged users that are getting earmarked first. With the idea that someday maybe everybody within your site would be having some sort of advanced authentication, whether it be soft tokens only, or the combination of a soft token and a PIN, maybe for your higher level security. So that's just some of the things that we've seen so far in implementation. And then we'll go about a little bit of how it's done. There's a lot of information here. 20-minute talk will not do it justice. If your appetite gets a little wet, please come back to me. Our booth's right over here behind us. I will be able to talk about multi-factor authentication in depth. I even have some full-blown PowerPoints that we can talk about today and tomorrow if you want to really get into the nitty-gritty of how this is done with Top Secret and ACF2. Right now, as I said earlier, we did do this through the Agile methodology. Our first customers that came to us were really interested in RSA because that's what they had running already on their distributed side, so it only made sense. Well, we already are paying RSA for token processing on distributed. Why not have ACF2 and Top Secret play along in the same space? So we did RSA first. We started talking to our government sites, and their mandates were always driven by PIV-CAC cards, basically smart cards to be exploited within their sites. What is interesting is a lot of them have a mixed batch, maybe RSA and or PIV-CAC, depending on who is carrying the credentials. We do allow a mixture of both. What is really interesting is some customers are going so far as that they'll have the PIV-CAC for most of their government sites, and then for some reason their consultants carry RSA tokens. Now I don't know if that is because it's easier to implement and distribute a token in a fob instead of maintaining the cards, but it seemed almost backwards to me because I'd want the PIV-CAC side on the consultant side. So one of the things that was interesting, though, is there's a theory that the target breach that could have been prevented if they were using some kind of a multi-factor authentication, because really what happened is they didn't suspend the ID and the consultant still had the password. So think about that. If they were using some kind of a multi-factor, that may not have happened. Because you revoke the token, nobody can use it anymore when that, so theory, I don't know if it's true. The other piece that we do take care of, and because I'm an equal opportunist, we do work with IBM MFA. So ACF2 and Top Secret will work with IBM MFA. I'll be honest, we are not at the version 1.2 level yet. We're getting there, it's in the backlog. I'm a little biased, I kind of like my CA products to work first, but that's why we're here. But I do like working with IBM, and we will be catching up to some of the features that are in MFA 1.2. The status of the support. We have published, like I said, the advanced authentication for RSA, the IBM MFA 1.2, the PIV-CAC support for both Top Secret and ACF2. We have also just published Radius support for Top Secret, and we're working on a Radius support for ACF2 right now. The interesting thing of why we took Radius next was that a lot of our customers are looking at a general Radius server to connect to, and then they're putting multi-factors behind that. Which will also allow us in the very near future to work with our own OTP product line. So we're expanding it. If your sites are looking at another factor, please contact us. It is truly agile. We will work with you to get other factors up behind it. A couple of the major features that we did, and what was fun about this is we did work with our customers to find out the priority of the features. It was really interesting going down this journey. We knew we wanted a global option. That was pretty simple to think. We're sitting there in our rooms in the development saying, yeah, we got to be able to control this globally. From that perspective, we started then going lower to say, well, you know what? We want to be able to control this maybe at the application level. So we put in application controls. One of the first controls that a lot of our customers did was TSO, because they knew their privileged IDs are on TSO, working from a system level, not a privileged ID from an application level. So we said, you know what? This will be great. We'll control it by application. We ran into our first gotcha at that point, because we also found out that the sign-on processing, and I hate going in the weeds in these things, doesn't always pass the application name on the sign-on. So we had to think out of the box a little bit. So I'll be honest with you, we can't control all applications, because if we don't have the information to make the decision, we can't make the decision. So we did our best to control it by application. One of the interesting things that worked into, and this is one of the fun parts of our job, is so we're working with a major financial institution, and of course the security people are all gung-ho on this and saying, you know what, we want everybody to use tokens. They start rolling it out to their lines of businesses. Well, they got users that can attach to hundreds of CICSs to do maintenance. Yeah, that didn't go over too well. You mean I got to enter my token for every time I connect to a CICS? Yeah, this is not going to work. So we rethought that. So what we did, and we actually beat IBM to the punch on this one, so I was happy. We put in the ability to still use your past tickets. So the most common implementation that we see right now is to use MFA, Advanced Authentication, at your session manager level to sign on to a TPX. Then underneath that, configure your applications to still use past tickets. A lot of our customers, we found out, were doing the password playback, so they had to change that. I was embarrassed that TPX didn't handle more than 8-byte passwords when we started this, even though they've been GA for a while, but we learned. We worked with our TPX brethren to get that instituted, but that seems the most common implementation right now. Will it change? It could. People are getting used to being prompted for tokens more and more. When we're here, I have to sign on twice in some cases. I have to VPN in and then still sign on to the mainframe. One of the things that we're talking about is single sign-on within CA. There's a lot of talk about truly getting single sign-on to be powerful on the mainframe. So we're moving fast. We're not stopping here. And that's one thing I want you to take home with you. If you got ideas and how you want to implement things, please let me know. The other feature that we talked about was, as people rolled this out, when you think about it, what happens when you start, but you still have a disaster recovery site that does not have the capabilities yet to have RSA tokens because it never cared about it on the mainframe. We have the ability to allow fallbacks to the passwords. Now, one of the gotchas with this implementation that we found is people start to forget what their password was because they're using their tokens. So that's more of a process thing, but these are the things we're learning as a best practice until such time you get RSA or whatever your factor is hooked up into your disaster recovery site. And truly, to be totally secure, that's what should happen. But we also know when you have I have one customer that has 108 LPARs, other customers well into the 50 LPARs, just for a normal day-to-day stuff, and that's not even counting disaster recovery. So we did allow fallback. And then the one thing with the communication pathway, when we first put RSA out, we did go directly to RSA. We did this for performance reasons and to be able to keep the code path as small as possible. We have different code paths for different factors just because of the methodology they use. For example, the CA-PAM implementation with certificates, right now we have no way to get the certificate passed to the mainframe as is for all applications. So we took a little different attack on that, and we did it different than IBM. IBM, if anybody's has looked at the IBM MFA piece, IBM is using an out-of-band process, which is a token type process that you get a token back when you swipe your smart card. We took a little different take on that. What we did with our implementation, because we could work with our CA-PAM friends, is we looked at it from the perspective that when you swipe your card, insert your card, we come back and authenticate back to the CA-PAM server to make sure the security environment's still instantiated. So we took a little different take on it. One of the things in the backlog is we are going to look at out-of-band processing for other applications that may not be able to handle a PIN and a token. So that's why that's in our backlog right now. So let me, I forgot I kept the fancy stuff in this one, so I'm going to get the whole picture here. In a nutshell, we looked at advanced authentication. The strongest is something you have and something you know, correct? So RSA tokens give you the ability to have both. You can just have something you have, which we call soft tokens when I talk to my customers, or hard tokens is something you have and something you know, which is a PIN. So, as I said, most of the time they're using hard tokens. One of the best practices I have found is that if you are going down the advanced authentication journey, make sure you're inventorying your applications that you want to be governed by MFA. If they cannot handle more than 8-byte credentials, start getting those up to date, especially in-house stuff, because everybody kind of lost track of their in-house sign-on processing. As I said, you can control it by application, but if you truly want more than 8 bytes with the hard token, you have to inventory your applications. And you can start that before you start anything else. That's not to say the external security managers have to turn on passphrase. That is not the intent. We just have to have the ability to consume the information. So that is one of the gotchas for the hard token. As I said, flexibility to activation. We can go from few to many to all. We're seeing a migration of privileged access from a security perspective, privileged access from an application perspective, and then finally all users. Those of you that have been in the security world know there are so many ways to configure security. I can't even put a definition on a privileged user anymore. I basically consider everybody a privileged user that's on the mainframe right now, because with HIPAA, with GDPR, with PCI, everybody's able to get to sensitive data just about nowadays because of so many regulations. So what's the first step? Let's not let everybody get into the door to start looking at the stuff. So I really do believe passwords at rest will become a thing of the past on the mainframe. I don't think it's going to be overnight. We've seen it. For example, we know IBM console support doesn't support passphrase yet. I know IBM knows about it, so and we keep talking about it, but there are some things that are going to take a little while to get to that point. As I said, the idea to be able to fall back to a password if you have to in an emergency is really important. We do not want to stop production workloads to continue. That was huge for us. One of the other things that came up, it was kind of interesting, was talk to some people and say, well, no, all my 8-byte IDs are defined on RSA. Well, then we find out, we talk to the RSA side of the house and say, oh, no, I guess that's not the case. So we do also allow the mapping of an 8-byte ID to whatever, I want to say it's 50 characters or something, to an RSA ID, so that you can truly have mapping. Now, I'll go a little off script here. If anybody's been looking at the ZS2.3 information, there is also the ability to do this with emails now. So you can actually map mainframe IDs to an email address, and there's services within the operating system, staff callable services, so that your applications can start exploiting this. So that's a little plug for ZS2.3 and ACF2 and Top Secret in the same realm. And then, as I said, total control, okay, I shouldn't say that. A lot of controls at the application level. Now the interesting thing about this is, one thing I do like to talk to customers about, if you do happen to have a legacy application, we can help you modify the application code to ensure the Apple ID is passing a sign-on. I know a lot of people are losing their experts, but if you have the source code still, which that's always another interesting dialogue with some of our customers, that can be changed because it is a simple parameter within the rack route sign-on process. So we could help you get to that point. As I said, we really tried to keep as much mainframe centric as we possibly could. We did not want, think about a couple reasons for this. One, maintenance. Okay, let's get past the install part. What about maintenance? If I can keep as much on the mainframe as I possibly can, the maintenance cycle is a lot easier. Now, one of the people that we've talked to, one of the things that we do have in the backlog, though, is the ability to point to another RSA server. Because one thing that was pointed out by our friends is that, John, what happens if I want to upgrade to a new IBM RSA server? So I can point to that and ensure that that's working. I said, well, that's probably a really good idea. So we are looking at to be able to give you the ability to assign multiple RSA servers and control that. What was interesting about that, when we said that, we were able to get that into the CA PAM implementation because we learned in our journey, but now we just have to go back and put it in for RSA. A lot of the new code is written in Java, so we get to exploit the new instruction sets, and as IBM improves the performance with Java, we get the benefit automatically, so we don't have to retool things and everything. And the only other thing, as I said, is we did want, at least for RSA, to have a direct connection to RSA. The Radius server does give us the ability to handle multi-factors as long as they're Radius compliant. So that was why we went that way later. Now, what's interesting is you can configure RSA to be have a Radius protocol. So we'll be able to do both if you decide to change the protocol. I'm not going to. I left this slide so you guys can take a look at it at your convenience. While we're talking about privileged access from a pure sign-on play, privileged access management is becoming a bigger discussion within the industry for the mainframe. Privileged access management really covers a lot of things. I mean, it's session monitoring, it's least access privilege. So please visit our PAM people here. They're doing a lot there. I know some of our customers use PAM for checkouts of IDs, so you can be able to control your IDs. We have another talk on where we're going with trusted access management for the mainframe specific and our journey down that. When you think about it, this is a first step for the mainframe, for us at least. You know, we wanted to ensure multi-factor was in there, but when you really talk about privileged access management, it is a broader scope, and it is becoming more of an issue on the mainframe from an audit perspective and everything. So please stop by. We would love to see where you guys are going within your companies in the privileged access management journey. We're discussing this with customers, and there was an announcement this morning of our new offering for the mainframe only. But we really, this session is really about the strong authentication. That was really important to most of our customers out of the box. Everything else is going to be gravy as we do, finish the journey. I'm just going to skip over that. So the whole idea of the PIV and CAC card, it's a smart card. We use them all the time. Government, it's a mandate. Ever since the OMB hack that came out, they pushed this. I'll be the first to admit the deadline that they put on the government sites was unbelievable. They didn't make the deadline. They're getting write-offs. We're getting to that point, but the mainframe was not positioned well for PIV CAC. To be honest with you, it's still not positioned well for PIV CAC. Some of our government sites even went so much to open up and build their own interfaces, which they constitute as jump boxes, to kind of mitigate the issue a little bit. So they started moving in the right direction, but we think that our solution's a little stronger, and we're going to learn more and go forward. Now, what was interesting is I was at one of the government bodies and talked to them, and they're actually rethinking PIV CAC cards now, because PIV CAC cards in the field are a bit of an issue. When you're in an office, it's okay, but if they're required when you're in the field, it does become a little bit of a problem. You're in the desert, things like that are a little harder to mitigate, where maybe a token process could be a little stronger. So they may be rethinking that. What I do suggest, just in general, and I probably should have said this first, those of you that were in my password / MFA session, the important thing there is to start looking at how people can get into your system. If you're not going down MFA right now, then at least look at your password controls and make sure they're up to standards. Keyword disasstig. Take a look at what the recommendations are. At least start there. We have multiple people taking different ways to the journey. They're looking at their password controls. They may be exploiting password phrases because that's good enough. Or they may be taking it to the level that I think you should be at for multi-factor authentication. In general, make sure your passwords at rest are AES encrypted. Kind of just at least protect that database, so that's what I got to keep stressing. So I don't want to go through CA PAM. If anybody's interested in that, I do want to talk a little bit about the architecture of why I think we're a little better. One of the things that we said is that we can't get the certificate right now through a lot of mainframe applications. Some people are looking at Kerberos to try to go down that path, because that's another buzzword, which kind of cracks me up, because Kerberos has been on the mainframe for I don't know how many years. I mean, I remember working on some of that as a developer. That's how long ago that was. But now it's becoming a buzzword, which I always find interesting how slow the mainframe actually moves to something that was available. It absolutely cracks me up. But that's another take on sign-on processing. What we really did, and I touched on this, was try to get a really strong coupled integration with CA-PAM. We exploited CA-PAM as a product because it already had the PIV-CAC smart card processing within it. So I can walk up, if I have CA-PAM installed, I can walk up to my laptop, swipe or insert my PIV-CAC card, and then the process from there is no different than signing on to ACF2 and Top Secret. Right now, we did leave in the double check to use your ACF2 and Top Secret password to get to the mainframe. We're looking at that, it's in the backlog to remove that responsibility, but we tried to keep that as another authentication to get onto the mainframe and then do the callback to the CA-PAM appliance to ensure the security environment is still instantiated. Now, one thing cool about this is now you truly get all the benefits of privileged access management because CA-PAM is truly that. It is a privileged access management product. So you get the ability to turn on screen scraping. I talked to one person that said, I would love to screen scrape everything that a user does. Yeah, that gets a little crazy because that's a lot of data. But CA-PAM does give you the ability to compress that and to exploit that. One of the other things that CA-PAM is looking at is they have made improvements for the mainframe integration. We are working very closely with our CA-PAM people. There's going to be more announcements coming next year, probably during the next CA World, to have even stronger integration from CA-PAM to the mainframe because we truly want the mainframe just to be another server. That's our goal. So if you think about it, people don't care where the data is coming from, right? Your users don't know where the data is coming from. If we can get to the point where we're not talking about that as, quote, another entity in a silo, I think it's better for all of us, including your business. You know, it's still the most powerful platform that you can use, most securable, not the most secure. You know, that's why I always like to preach best practices. Can't open up a lot of can of worms.